This is Ask Congress on Congress Web TV. It's the web station that seeks to facilitate and expand personal relationships between the viewing public and the representatives that they place in power. It's our goal to create avenues of communication that will break barriers of location, nationality, and culture and bring about a true sense of our global community. Today we're privileged to have on our program the distinguished Congresswoman from New York's 14th District, Congresswoman Maloney. She is proudly serving many parts of New York, including Manhattan and Queens. Chairwoman Maloney is the national leader on extensive accomplishments on security, financial services, and the economy, and as well women's issues. But she's also taking care of the men as well.
Thank you.
She's earned much praise from many of the national publications. For example, the New York Times said, New York's congressional delegation stands out for their moxie, kind of the way New Yorkers often do. Among the brashest members is Representative Carolyn Maloney, a Democrat from Manhattan. And Time magazine had called her a tenacious, resilient legislator. Congressman Maloney, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be with you once again.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure.
You're just getting over, actually, some great successes in the Congress, yes. Namely the credit card bill that you initiated. Where does that stand now? It's passed, as I understand it.
Well, the Credit Card Bill of Rights, which curbed some of the most abusive practices from issuers and leveled the playing field between the consumers and the issuers, was signed into law by President Obama. And the Pew Foundation did a study that said this year alone, the bill has saved consumers over $10 billion
wow.
by stopping abusive practices that were very unfair, such as raising their rates anytime, any reason, retroactively on their balances, often catching them in a never-ending cycle of debt.
And without a notification, too, as I understand.
Absolutely. And now, as central to the bill, is if they're going to raise your rate, they must notify the consumer. And this consumer has 2 pay periods of the credit card bill to decide whether they want to opt into the higher rate or pay off their card at the existing rate. It puts competition back into the system, and I urge your viewers never to opt into the higher interest rate. There are other rates from credit card unions, from all kinds of areas and other banks that have smaller rates, so never opt into that higher rate. Pay it off, and it stops some of the abuses, such as raising it retroactively. Now they cannot raise it retroactively on your balance. I had consumers who came to me who had bought cars or other items, and they were told lifetime rate of 9%. And they felt this is how they could buy their car. So they'd pay $8,000 for their car. Then they would raise the rate retroactively on their balance, and they literally paid $9,000 and more and still had a credit card bill. These abuses were unfair, deceptive, and anti-competitive, and the Federal Reserve agreed.
Well, one point now with the bill, is there some question about the college kids and how they are being impacted by this?
Well, we really specifically mentioned college-age kids in the bill because there were a lot of abusive practices towards college students, and many of them were graduating with huge debt that they owed on the loans that they got for their education, but also huge credit card debt that they couldn't manage, and they were trapped in many, many years of debt. So what the bill says is that if you are a college student or under 21 years of age, if you're under 21 years of age, then you have to look at your independent income in assessing whether or not you are eligible for a credit card and for your credit card limit. What the issuers were doing was looking at the family income and therefore giving them very high limits and trapping them in debt. So this is one way of controlling and helping college-age students to better manage their financial affairs.
Well, isn't there something, too, about the granting of the credit card itself depending upon something, what is it, assessment or something like that?
Independent income.
Independent income.
Your own income, not your parents' income, but your own income. And in the rule, right now the Federal Reserve is implementing the rule. They have swept in stay-at-home moms, which is not our intent, and saying that they cannot get a credit card except for on their own individual income. But a marriage is very different from a college student. A marriage is a legal economic unit where many people make contributions in different ways and share the income of the family. I can remember, Lester, when women could not even open up a bank account in their own name. Can you remember that? And I can remember when they could not get credit in their own names.
Right.
So this provision or interpretation would put women backwards. And so I have written a letter to the Federal Reserve to ask them to reconsider that was not the intent of my bill.
What about the glass ceiling? Is it broken?
No, it's very, very much there and in place, and for every woman who makes it to the Supreme Court or becomes the Speaker of the United States Congress, there are still millions of women who are trapped in dead-end jobs and on the factory floor, and the studies show that in the past 25 years, it has been very difficult to break that ceiling. We are still 77 cents to the dollar, which is unfair. You have to work so much longer and harder to get the same income as a man.
But now with the changeover, I guess you'd call it, the fact that so many women are captains of industry today, don't you think that will have an effect upon
there are so many women that are becoming educated, too. There are more women going to college and to higher education. But there are very few women that are captains of industry. In fact, the number of women on boards has probably diminished since the 70s. The number of women that are CEOs has not grown. According to the Catalyst report, it has stayed stagnant for many years. And actually, I did a study that's on my website called A New Look at the Glass Ceiling that looked at 74% of the women in the workforce, not at the area where they entered the workforce, but 5 years out when they are being considered for management or promotion. And it found that in the 10 categories where the majority of women work, we not only did not gain, we lost ground in many cases, except for in areas that are female-dominated, such as education and in healthcare management. Many executives in hospitals are women.
How about labor? Have they helped in improving the role of women?
Oh, absolutely. Labor has played a critical role in developing the middle class in this country and breaking down areas of discrimination against minorities and women and opening the doors of opportunity. I was a member of the teachers union before I went into politics, and they worked very hard to give women opportunities. Labor actually authored the first health care plans to give their workers health care and to give them that protection. So they have really been the backbone of pushing for protections for workers, whether it's work safety, and they were a critical part of a bill that I just passed, the 9/11 Health and Compensation Act, which to me is such a critically important bill, not only for the men and women who rushed into burning fires to save the lives of others while others were running away, but also as a statement of public policy. God forbid that we are attacked again. Would the contractors, would the laborers, would the construction workers, would the police and fire rush into such dangerous situations knowing that this great country did not provide the health care and support?
How do you account for the fact that it has taken so long to compensate these people? The consideration of it was given some time ago, but it seems unbelievable that our country has so little compassion today than to take care of these people who were really, many of them gave their lives.
And their health.
And that's right.
We know that on 9/11 we lost roughly 3,000 innocent lives who went to work that day. But since 9/11, thousands and thousands of more have lost their health and in some cases died because of the toxic fumes, and government said to the people that it was safe to go back and work there. It was my priority for the past 7 years. I worked practically every day on this bill. I poured my heart and brain and soul into helping to get it passed. And when I would talk to people around this country, or people from foreign countries, the legislators and others, or concerned citizens, they could not believe that we were not providing health care to these heroes and heroines. One of the problems, Lester, and you know this as a former congressperson, is it is a three-legged stool on anything. We have to get the House, we have to get the Senate, and we have to get the President. And for most of those years, President Bush was the president, and he was opposed to the bill. He was not supportive of the bill. We had a window of opportunity with a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic President, President Obama, who signed it into law. If we had not passed it in the closing days of the 111th Congress, and it was the last bill, the very last bill that passed the House and the Senate. So there's a great deal of gratitude to Speaker Pelosi and to Leader Reid and to the two senators from New York, Schumer and Gillibrand, and the entire New York delegation, which made it a top priority of our delegation. And my co-partners in passing this daily, working daily on this for years, was Congressman Nadler and Congressman King. They all made it a top priority, and the whole delegation actually did a magnificent job. And it's so important because we know in New York, and you're a New Yorker, we know that we continue to be target number one in the world for terrorism. So we have to be right 100% of the time in foiling these attempts. And I know from Police Commissioner Kelly there have been 11 attempts since 9/11 to hurt New Yorkers. They were stopped, thank goodness, with the excellent work of the intelligence community, the FBI, the CIA, the New York City Police Department, the Federal Police Department, Fire Department, the whole coalition. They were stopped. But God forbid that one breaks through. Our workers have to know that our country is going to be there for them. They were there for us. We need to be there for them.
Do you think that part of the fact that the bill and the compensation didn't take place because of an attitude toward New York by some of the other representatives of states?
I prefer to look at the positive that we did gain so many votes. We passed it. It is now the law of our country. And it's an important precedent that if there's an attack in Nevada or Iowa or California or Florida, any great state, that our country is going to stand behind and with our heroes and heroines.
Talking about standing behind and what have you, the recent legislation that the Republicans have brought up, health care legislation, how do you account for this? I mean, there was a concentration on, at least on their part, for jobs. And the criticism was we put a health care bill before the question of jobs. Now it's exactly the reverse.
That's true. And I believe that President Obama will speak at length about the economy and jobs in his upcoming State of the Union, and he has done an incredible job. You have to remember that when he was sworn into office, this country was losing 700,000 jobs a month. But with his leadership and the Democratic leadership, we have put a number of reforms to stabilize the economy and to have incentives to hire Americans, with the tax credit for employing unemployed Americans, with the streamlining of the business loans to small businesses, the $30 billion loan program to get liquidity back into the markets, a number of steps that we've taken. But it is true that the Republicans were adamantly opposed to the life-saving Democratic health bill. And here they are. The first part of business is to repeal a bill that is taking away health care from millions of Americans.